Starbird walking over to the museum.
Really hard. Say, look, you've got to bring Starbird's predictor back, and essentially I talked the guy into it. I mean, I really hammered on this guy. But in any event, he said, well, good. Now that you've talked us into doing it, you get to do the box art model for free. And I said, well, sure. That'd be great, no problem there. So remember, I called you up and you gave me roughly the formula for the model. I remember that. And so I went down and bought all the House of Colors, candies, and all the rest that you had indicated, and built this model when it shows up. So on behalf of the model car builders in the United States, and out of respect for you and all that you've done for the hobby, Daryl, I want to present this to you with my thanks for all that you've done for all of us for such a long time.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
And it turns out the color's awfully close.
It really is.
That's cool.
Very much. Super.
Just you figure out what black is on. House of Colors clear. It's a little dusty.
Great. Got a model or showcase model for
You bet.
She will put that in a prize place right here in the museum. It's fantastic.
I've got a little plate, a little plaque coming for you, but it's quite done, so I'll ship it to you shortly.
Yeah,
Thanks for all you've done. It's a real honor to present that to you.
that's my pleasure.
Gosh, that's neat.
Gee, it's treasure.
No,
Real
thank you.
treasure.
Thank you very
Well,
much.
as nice as the car. Very nice.
Well, not quite.
And I need a real quality kid. I was never a real supermodel car builder. Seems like I could build a big one about as fast as the model, so I'll leave that expertise to you, and now I'll treasure this.
No, thank you kindly. It's a real honor to do that to you. Okay.
Promotion, I did a car show along with them downtown in the auditorium, along with the National Drags.
Sure.
I took it out the strip to advertise the show, and we were running down the strip with it. And of course, it had the stick steering in it, and Don Gartlitz and all the guys were there, and they were kidding me that how in the world could you control that thing, that stick, as it got out there, So anyway, I'm going down the strip. I take off, going down the strip, and I'm just shooting straight down the strip, and I'm thinking to myself, and this is going through my mind, heck, ain't nothing going straight. These people don't think the wheels turn, So I decided I'd turn. So I turned, and I went on the strip that way and turned back the other way, just trying to illustrate the fact that the steering actually works, not just going straight down the strip.
Sure.
So I come back, and as I'm driving back up the return lane, just run along straight again, I'm hearing the loudspeaker guy saying, Starbird had problems controlling that thing all the way down the strip. He was going all over the strip, see? And I'm thinking I'm showing the people how to steer it, And they're thinking I'm out of control, so I couldn't win either way.
That's funny.
I got back, Don Gartlett's run up to me and said, you had a little trouble keeping that thing straight going down there, did you? And I said, well, I was trying to show you a turn, Kind of comical. So then I had to run back down straight just to show everybody I could run the stupid thing straight without any trouble at all, This guy here.
Who's that?
That's Chuck Miller. He's the guy I built the Forecaster for.
Oh, really?
Just to start on the Forecaster this time.
The hood's off it.
Yeah. I don't really know why the hood's off in that
Hood's on it over there.
Yeah.
This is a recreated fascia of Starbird's original shop in Mulvane, Kansas. In there is the staged in process view of his original custom Cadillac, I believe a 47. He found his original Cadillac some time ago, and has put all this together. Look at the shop rates on the far wall. Its original tools: an old metal brake, welding mask, tool chest, the hood of the car, files, picks, lead paddles, beeswax container, and so forth for lighting. Itself, which is just around the corner from the other display. And inside you can see the greatest custom car of all time, the Predicta. Fully restored recently. Daryl did the bodywork, Carl Green painted it. In front of which is the model I presented to Daryl today, which is the monogram box art model. Predicta is gorgeous, has a fresh bubble top, fresh paint, fresh upholstery, and so forth. Before we go in and see the Predicta, I neglected to take a picture of this. Brief description Daryl has about his original tools and his facility in Mulvane, Kansas, and so forth. This car is even more spectacular in person than through photographs or magazine coverage or so forth. A lot of body work on this, which is quite subtle. Just rearward of the door, the fin coming off the trunk resolves itself dramatically into the character line on top of the door. It's not readily evident in other photographs where you wouldn't see that. And resolving itself, of course, down here. Also, the nose of this dives down a good deal more dramatically than it does in the Kid. Certainly more so than you'd see in a photograph. Bruce Pierce, who's kindly come here today to help me, and I will be doing some measurements on this a little later. But if you sight down the side of it, you can see how beautifully done the bodywork is. Again, the box art model I built for Daryl for the monogram reissue. You can see inside the wheel wells there is a filler panel welded to the flare of the fender. Much modified 59 Buick recorder panels. Daryl said he had to go to Canada to locate some seat cover and upholstery material which reasonably approximated the original frieze, which is no longer made. Daryl also told me that the top is slightly lopsided because the radius of the ring differs one side to another. This side being that is the driver's side being more of a constant curve. It permits the bubble to blow up further on this side. And since this ring is the same one he made in 1964, it explains why the bubbles since that time have been slightly elevated on the passenger side of it. The trunk on this was made from a 56 Thunderbird hood. You hear this building expanding in the Oklahoma heat. And here's Bruce taking pictures. Hi, Bruce.
Hi there, hi there.
Thank you for your help.
You're quite welcome.
This is great to spend some time.
Event for both of us.
It really is. We're visiting those little boys of our history.
They're having the time of their life.
Indeed. Thank you. Good to see you. Inner wheelhouse pants that keep the water from flipping upside the body are not welded or metal to the body. They rather appear to be some sort of heavy vinyl, a molded-like material, which is black in color, has a slight texture to it. There also is a slight flare along the base of the rocker panels, both sides, which connects to a slight flare all the way around all four wheel wells. That detail is not readily apparent when you look at the kit, or when you see photographs, because it's so subtle. Yes, ma'am. How are you?
I'm Donna.
How are you, Donna? Pleased to meet you.
This will show the walls of how the panels are done inside.
Yes.
And although you won't be able to see a lot of that stuff, you can see it says Daryl Starbird. You can see it's got a whole bunch of stuff there. Okay. Oops, change roll. Got another stringy thingy here. Okay. Time to get back to work. We are down in the heart of hot Oklahoma.
It is warm.
Yeah.
Thank goodness for the air conditioning.
Yep.
The first time you put the wheels on them and sit them down on the ground, you know, it's like, oh God, these cars.
Yeah. Yeah.
that feeling is always something can't
But-
capture any other way, I guess.
There's something really enduring about the Predictor, though. It seems timeless.
Yeah, it seemed to have that touch about it.
Yeah.
I guess that's the reason it's become such a outstanding piece in the whole industry, I guess.
No question.
Few cars have done that.
Not many. You can count them on one hand that have managed to avoid being trendy and have managed to have an enduring artistic quality about them, which that surely does.
Probably the only thing at all that dated that thing is the fins.
Oh,
But
no.
I kind of look for fans to come back anyway, something eventually, in the style.
Yeah, but that car wouldn't be the Predictor without
Oh, no,
fins.
you'd have to have them.
Well, have you seen Harry Bradley's new car? Has a J30, put a dorsal on the trunk. He thinks fins are coming back.
Yeah. Of course, I don't think much of that touch.
Oh, I don't either.
I don't think that's pretty bad for Bradley.
That also is odd for Bradley because his taste is usually pretty good.
Pretty good. That whole car, that layout and everything just blew my mind.
With the scroll down the side of it, it
Like any of them.
doesn't
And
work.
it's only a little two-place
Yeah.
Buick, you know. Trying to get it. There it is, Mark. Somewhat
Fantastic.
opened up.
Good heavens. Thank you, Daryl.
Oh, that fire didn't take. Put it down there. Keep that out of the photo drawer.
Yeah, these are always problems when you restore something.
Yep. French control anyway. There we go. Close it. Get back open. Whoop. Right button here. Forgot what was what. All time. You should have to let me out. Hit that again. I don't know, Mark, whether you can get in or not.
Well, if I can just sit in it sideways, I mean, that just to have.
Get in,
He just wants his rear end to touch it one time.
TV set even. Yep, bro.
An old Amanda television.
Admiral.
Oh, Admiral?
All the dreams just went down in one tube, didn't they?
Does the word fad tea have any meaning for you now?
Yeah, sure. My entire life, Daryl.
I should have made it a foot longer.
This is very emotional for me. Look at this. Oh, this is really cool. Oh, this is really cool. Don't laugh, Bruce.
No, it's seventh heaven, man. It's
Oh,
great.
man. Look at this. It's a dream of a lifetime, Daryl.
There you go.
It really is. Gosh, look at all the. I'll be darned.
A little crude compared to the high-tech cars of today.
Oh, the heck with that. This is better. Wow.
Fantastic.
Now, is that cool or is that cool?
Oh yeah, like you said, this is,
I think maybe you can even get the top down on his road.
I believe I would fit.
You're about right height.
It'll get hot, Bruce.
Yeah, his head's about right. Now we just got to figure out how to get you out of it.
I don't want to get out. Might get warm in there.
It does.
We're going to take still? That's a shift. Price rod. Price automatic. One of those push button automatics.
Oh, yeah.
Little lever just flicks it into the different gears.
Now, I feel a brake pedal down here, but I don't feel any. Where's the
There
gap?
should be a throttle there hanging down on the right.
Oh yeah, it's okay. It's up here.
Actually had this whole interior out and I haven't even had time to do it with it since I got back. Where you set it all up.
Absolutely.
Isn't that incredible?
In fact, the seat here, as I recall, it's lower right here. They must have bent a little bit when you see it's up higher than that one over there.
Yep.
They must have bent it when they upholstered it because that thing used to not be nearly that
Yeah, you have a little more room
slanted
here.
there, if I remember. See, that's a conduit and they must have bent that thing when they pulled it out of
You
there.
know, this is like sitting in the Apollo spacecraft that went to the moon or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
You feel like you're around you.
No, I mean it's historic. You know, for us,
Yeah.
that's what.
I don't think I've sat in that car. 5 years, probably, maybe 10.
Wow.
I stored heat and traction and actually cracked that way from the before.
Really? Well, it's good it's in an air-conditioned place then.
It had stored for about 15 years, I guess, off and on. Nobody ever did anything with it.
How did that TV work in there? Did it,
You know, once you got moving out on the road, it went out.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't even picture them in days. But driving around town, it was fun. Kind of neat, sitting and driving at night and had that thing on, everybody crawling around, looking at you, watching TV. And that was a big deal in the days, of course, as you know, is driving around and driving and
Yeah.
eating places, you know, and you sit there.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a good story. I was down in Dallas, Fort Worth. Dave Poole was working for me at the time, and this was like 60. Gosh, I don't know, 63 or 4 maybe, somewhere along in there. And in them days there was only one, between Dallas and Fort Worth there was only one interstate, which was a 4-lane that hooked the two towns together. Of course it's about 3 now. And when I did my Fort Worth show, we also had to buy, because the market was so close together, you had to buy a TV station over in Dallas. And they wanted to do a news deal on the car for news at 10:30. So I drove the car over there from Fort Worth, and I had that new 59 Buick. So it was in 60, I guess, or 60 or 61, because I was still driving that 59 Buick. Anyway, Dave Poole followed me over in the 59 Buick just in case we'd have any trouble, which we always had another car close by just in case, you know. It's about 35 or 40 miles over there. I drove clear over and we did TV at 10:30 and got back in the car and going to drive back to Fort Worth, put away that night. And he was following me in my Buick. And I was just acting smart. I just floorboarded this whole thing, you know, and I'm going up. And he says about 90 miles an hour, but his Buick following me, see. And all at once just boom, and this whole, I'm in the cockpit by myself. This thing just completely fills up what I'm thinking was smoke. Just all at once, I can't see nothing. I mean, the whole cockpit is just boom.
you can't
full of
open.
smoke.
You can't open it at that speed.
And I'm
It'd
going
rip it
90
right
miles
off.
an hour, and I can't even see. I mean, you know, just bang. And actually, what happened was that darn water pump come apart.
Yeah, steam.
And just steam come in there just all at once, you know, just filled it up with steam. Anyway, I come to screech and halt and got stopped out of a major disaster or anything, fortunately, and pulled over the highway there. Well, again, you can't move this thing without the engine running, you know, you can't even tow it with another car or anything. We're about 20 miles to where the trailer is stored over in Fort Worth for it. And this is, by this time it's midnight or real close to it on a Tuesday night or something, before my car show. So Dave says, well, I'll stay out here while you go get the trailer. And I said, nuts that stupid car, we'll get it in the morning. And I just left it sitting right there on the freeway, just on the side. It's like sitting there all night. I just went back to my hotel and went to bed, and I was so mad at the thing. And next morning we get the trailer, get up fairly early and get the trailer, and we head back out on the freeway to get the car. And just as you come over the hill, we're seeing about 3 police cars sitting around this thing, highway patrol.
Yeah.
And I pull up there with the trailer. This policeman comes up to me and says, is this your car? I said, yeah. Of course, we haven't even got legitimate tags on it. No, nothing to make it legal, I mean, you know. And it didn't even have windshield wipers in the days. On this car, later I put some on it. And he says, you know, I've sat here for the last 3.5 hours. I got a report on this car about 2 o'clock in the morning. Some guy called in and said there's some kind of a strange vehicle out on the highway, and everybody is stopping to look at it. You know, as they go by, you see the headlights hit that bubble top. Looks like a flying saucer sitting there. He says it's causing all kinds of problems. You better get a patrol car out there to solve the traffic situation. He said, I've been sitting out here 4 hours watching this car for you, directing traffic. Well, he was really upset with me. He says, if I did everything I could do to you now, and he was looking at the car, you know, on the wipers, you know, and he checked the tag. The tag was for another car that I had on it. You know.
Oh, gee.
Anyway, he just kind of laughed at the end and said, get that thing in the trailer and get it out of here. We loaded the trailer and hauled it back to Fort Worth. But now, to make the story really good, the next night, I get the car fixed. We go ahead and get a new water pump put on it next morning. Well, the following night, like on Thursday night, I drive in the Lone Star Drive-In, which is where everybody hung out in Fort Worth. We'd been hanging out there before that. I drove in there in it, and we parked like we always did. Had the signs taped on the side of it telling about the car show coming up. Some old guy comes up there, and he's in Fort Worth. They rode horses through the drive-in sometimes on Friday night. Just everybody's drunk. Cowtown. Anyway, the guy comes up to it, and he's got 2 girls with him and about 3 guys, and they're all been drinking a bunch. They got cans of beer in their hand, and they're drinking it. This guy comes up, and we're sitting inside Dave Pool on. This guy comes up, and he's leaning out, way out over the top like this with that can of beer. And I says, and I'm talking through the bubble, you know, I'm reaching down and hit the bubble to lift it up and tell him to get away from the car with the beer. I was afraid he's going to act like he's going to hit it. He says, what's this top made out of? And he got that beer can in his hands. He's hitting it with this hand, but I'm thinking any second he's going to put that beer can right down through my top, you know. So I'm lifting the top up to say something to him, and I finally get him away from the car. He's standing back about like this. And then all at once he says, we put the top back down, trying to ignore the guy so they'll go away. And I'm getting pretty upset with him. And he says, well, how do you steer this damn thing, you know? No steering wheel, he finally realizes, you know. And I says, I'm going like that. You see that center stick right there? You push that thing like that, and I reached over and grabbed that stick, and I was mad, and I just went like that. You know, and it ain't running to nothing. You're sitting there, and a stupid stick busts off my hand.
Oh.
And I'm sitting there, God, stick steering. The night before, maybe 2 nights before, we were going 90 miles an hour this thing with the same stick steering.
Oh, gee.
Providence smiled upon you twice in 1 week.
Unbelievable.
Very lucky.
So, this is like 10 o'clock at night probably, and this drive-in closes at 2. See? Well, we ain't about to get out and tell anybody we got any kind of trouble. See,
Yeah.
You know, this will be eagle killer. So Dave and I, we sat in this thing for 4 hours at this drive-in ordering a Coke every hour, you know, talking to people. At 2 o'clock, in the meantime, we talked to this guy and found out he had a welding shop down the street about 8 or 10 blocks. And at 2 o'clock, the drive-in, 2:30, the drive-in's completely gone. You know, we crawl out and go down to get this guy's gives me a jack and you crawl underneath, and I take the arm off where it's bolted down through the pitman on. Take it down to the shop, weld it all back up, come back, put it on there, and try it, and take it back off. But I had welded, the end of that shaft has a big bolt on it, a 1/2-inch bolt with the head welded to that shaft like that, just arced on there.
Yeah.
You know.
Crack
That thing
loose.
just busted right off where
Yeah.
I welded it,
Yeah.
hardened, you know.
Yeah.
But
But you know, a lot of the custom cars that got moved around like that have those kind of stories.
Oh, unreal.
You know,
So,
Bud used to tell
Scared
stories
the
like
heck
that
out of
about
me.
driving the Matador around.
mhm.
Same stuff. You know.
Oh, you just got sensations everywhere you go. I was up in Kansas City, and my wife and I done. As a matter of fact, she didn't ride with me very often, but she was with me this day, and we pulled up this red light. And I was on this side when I pulled up, and I pulled right up beside this guy. Met one of the main streets in Kansas City, and pulled up beside him, you know, and he's sitting there with the radio going, you know, and I pull up beside him all at once. He goes, you know, like that.
Double
like people
take,
did,
yeah.
you know. And he's looking at me. About this time, the red light changes, you know, and the guy behind him honks, and I take off, and he takes off. And all the time he's taking off, he's just looking around
Oh, no.
on this bubble top, you know. And this guy right in front of me goes up, and there's an incline like this. He goes up about a quarter of the block, and he just goes up there, and he's going to go left, you know, into a driveway. And he stopped, and this guy's looking at me, and I'm seeing that this guy stopped up here, and this guy's still looking, and I'm going like that, you know. And I guess he's thinking I'm just telling him something about my car. You know. He's still looking at it. He's floorboarded this thing to keep up with me, and I'm thinking, now what should I do? Maybe if I speed up, he'll lose me. You know. I speed up, and he speeds up. And about to end, go wham! He hits the back of that car, never hit his brakes or anything. I mean, he really clobbered his own car. Of course, Don and I thought, well, if we stopped, we just got away.
Can you imagine that guy telling the cop what he was doing?
I'm sure he couldn't even describe the car beside him, you know. One of the funny things that happened over the years. It wasn't funny to the guy, but it was comical. I wish I had that on video.
Yeah.
You know? Well, we always having people, you know, when you're driving, do dumb things like that, not paying attention to what they're doing.
Well, I'm always looking at stuff in traffic. We were driving along one time before my wife and I were married, and I had that '57 Ford fixed up pretty nice at one time. I had some.
Let's look at this. I think this is the pearl red one.
Well,
Yeah.
Yep.
they're real early ones, yeah.
And I brought that up.
Hard to compliment a car.
They're very hard to come by.
It's a shame that didn't work out. That's kind of neat.
Yeah. They made 1,000.
Yeah, they were trying to get as authentic as they could as far as color and everything goes. It's really a shame that didn't work out.
Yeah, it really is. Tell me now. Here is the. There were two different versions of this box. This is the earlier of the two. That car was displayed somewhere by Monogram. It is said it was at the New York Auto Show or the New York World's Fair. Do you know which is true?
New York World's Fair. Daughter had a Corvette, 62 Corvette, 60 Corvette, 58 Corvette, dual headlight, 58 Corvette. Traded for the 57 with this frame under. I'd worked at Boeing Airplane Company in Wichita, and he was from a small town in Dover, Kansas, and worked as a mechanic And then when the war broke out in '41, he moved from there to Wichita and went to work for Boeing, like half the country did. I mean, you know, he had 4 kids, so he didn't have to go to war, but he had to work in the aircraft defense plant. And his whole deal in life was for me to grow up. And I had two brothers and a sister. And he wanted us to be much more than a mechanic. I mean, that's one thing he always said: don't ever work on a car, regardless. Do something better, you know. So his whole idea was for me to be an aeronautical engineer. And when I graduated from high school, Wichita East, I went to Wichita State, which was Wichita University at the time. And I was going to be an aeronautical engineer. I mean, that was my whole thing in life, was to do that. And I went to work at Boeing, third shift, which was 12:30 at night till 8 in the morning. All the time I was going to college, I worked at Boeing. And when I was at Boeing, they wanted engineers real bad at that time. So all of us guys that were majoring in engineering, Boeing kept us on third shift so we could go to college in the daytime. And during that time, they kept closing down third shift because first and second was their major shifts, and third was kind of a shift they put on whenever they got behind on a project. So they would move us from department to department to keep about 10 of us as engineer majors. And my father worked there too, and he was a supervisor, so I had a good background. They wanted me to be an aeronautical engineer for them. And so they invested the time of moving me to keep me on third shift. I worked in the tooling department in plaster pattern maker for 6 months. I worked in a fiberglass plant for 6 months. I worked in a machine shop for 6 months. I worked in a foundry dressing dyes for 6 months. I worked in a machine shop for about 6 months. All of the 4 years I went to college. So I had a real strong background in a lot of areas that people would never touch on. I mean, you know, and at the time I thought, boy, I might waste my time. All I want to be is an engineer draftsman. I mean, you know, sit on a desk. I don't want to do all these other things. The thing I didn't realize at the time, and I do now, is I was getting an education, a broad, practical education that nobody in the world would ever get. I mean, you know, I was working in a plaster shop, dressing out plaster, making plaster tools for parts, you know.
Sure.
Working in a foundry, making perchlite dyes and dressing and all. These were valuable skills that I picked up in that 4 years I went to college. And so anyway, after the third year in college, I got married, and I realized I was never going to, I was up to...
What year was that, Darrell?
This has been 19. I graduated in high school in 51, went to college in 52, 3, 4, and 5. And 54, I quit college. I really went 3 years. Got 100 hours in, is what I did. And I quit college and started my shop up in 54. So I went to college, like I say, and got about 100 hours in, and then I realized I didn't like being an engineer, and I didn't like staying inside mainly. And in the meantime, when I was going to college and during high school, I played on my cars. I built a 41 Ford in high school in 51, my first custom 41 Ford convertible. And then even during college, I worked, even though I was working third shift at Boeing, I had a 48 Ford and I had some other cars I played with, 40 Chevy. And at night and weekends when I had the little bit extra time I had, still loved the cars, you know. And so anyway, I got 100 hours in, and the third year I was in college, I dropped engineering because I realized I wasn't never going to make the 144 hours, and I didn't really like it that well. I changed to business administration, took accounting and business things, because then I decided I was going to be a businessman instead of engineering.
Sure.
And mainly because I only needed 20 more hours to get my degree, and I needed 40 more to get the engineering degree. And I wanted to get a degree before I quit. You know? So I took a year of basic accounting and all that kind of stuff. So I had a pretty broad educational background. And when I started up my shop, I said, you know, and I got to know the guys and reading about them and so forth. They were all basically drop out of high school from a very meager background, uneducated people in the business, Balons and wind fields. And most of them guys didn't even finish high school, had no business aspect or, you know, engineering background or anything at all that I had. And I thought right then, you know, I'm going to go into this field, and I've got a plus on them already. I'm an educated person. You know, I've got a lot of advantages over all of them, and I, over the years, have really taken advantage of that. I mean, you know, I went into writing for the magazines, taking pictures. I just had a lot, and I'm not saying this in a bragging way, although I guess I am. I had a head start on all of them, because I went into a field that had nobody in it that really had any real true education or real true business background or whatever, you know. fortunately, I had a lot of lucky breaks. I mean, you know, I met Monogram in 1961 and put me on a salary. We did all the things I told you about the cars. I made more money in those few years than anybody did, I guess, in business. But I guess the thing that put me one step above them all, in 1957, I was in Wichita, Kansas. Everybody else was on the West Coast. Nobody in Wichita, Kansas knew anything about custom cars anyway. And I had my shop going since '54. I was beginning to build a following with a few, okay. Began to build a following with a few cars. You know, I had 30 or 40 semi-custom cars running around the streets. But still, the general public had no idea what I was doing, and it was just a few of the magazines out at that time. So I got the brainy idea, I'm going to do a car show just to educate Wichita on what I'm doing so I can build my business up, you know. So I took the bold step of going downtown and renting a big forum, which is a big building downtown, and gathered together 60 cars and put on my first car show, produced it myself, you know. And I charged $1 a gate, and it just totally blew my mind. I had 4,000 people show up to my first car show. Brought in $4,000. I mean, you know, which was big money in them days, and I only had $1,500 in the darn thing. And I thought, God, I just made more money than I just made a year building cars. I mean, here in one weekend, you know. So that that was like in March. In September, I went to Kansas City and rented the municipal auditorium up there. I remember walking up that building. It's a square block building, you know, here. I'm thinking, God, man. Rented that building and put on a car show in Kansas City and had a similar type success. Went a few months later and did Oklahoma City. And in that year's time, I made more money on them 3 shows than I'd made the 4 years previous building cars, you know. And I thought, well, boy, you know, this is the thing. And in the meantime, I began doing more and more magazines. In '57, that same year I did my first car show, Spencer Murray come to Manhattan, Kansas with the Dream Truck. He was taking the Dream Truck from California back to Metz to put the fins on it. And on his way back here, he went through Manhattan, Kansas to a little car show. And I had the '55 Plymouth I just finished and the '47 Cadillac. And I met Spence up there. And that's the first cars I had in the magazine in '57. And he,
Right.
you know, went back and did that for me. And I told Spence, how do I get my cars in the magazine? I'm stuck way back here. I'm building a nice car. And I already built several really nice cars that had never been in a magazine. And he said, well, you know, you're stuck back here in the middle of nowhere. How are we going to get photos when we can't afford to send photographers out there? He said, what you need to do is buy yourself a good camera and start shooting pictures and send them to me, and I'll run them for you. But I got to have good photos. That's the secret. And a good little storyline with it, you know. And so I went back and I bought me a Shikamat reflex camera, you know, which was a Japanese version of the Rolleiflex, which I really needed. That's what he suggested was the Rolleiflex. But all I could afford was a Shikamat. I bought me a Shikamat and began shooting photos, and I set that thing up in my shop on a tripod, and everything we did, I don't care if we filled the door handle in, I took photos of doing it. And I began doing all those photo do-it-yourself stories. You know, I had hundreds of them, well, literally 100 of them or so, do-it-yourself stories on all the different magazines, Rod and Custom Car Craft, and all the Eastern magazines. Many magazines you'd pick up, I'd have 3 and 4 stories in them. The Eastern magazine, Car, Speed, and Style, and all of them, you know,
Sure.
in the same month. And I was making good money writing stories, and they were paying me to do it, you know, all the different publications. And so I'd charge a guy maybe $200 to do a taillight job, and then I'd sell a story for $200, and, you know, double my money, and I could afford to do the cars cheaper than anybody, and more of them, because I was making my income in other ways, you know. And anyway, the car shows then kicked off, and from those 3 shows I did that first year, and the second year I did a couple more, and the car show deal began to build. And in 1950 or 1967, 10 years after I did my first show, I was building between 63 and 67. I still had my contract with Monogram. In 67, I stopped and looked at my business and where I was headed, and I was spending about 90% of my time building cars, about 10% of my time doing my car shows. And I look in my books, and I'm making 90% of my money on the car shows and 10% building cars, you know, income-wise.
Yeah.
So in 1967, I closed my shop. I said, I'm never doing another customer car. I'll put all my effort at this point into my car shows, because that's where I'm making my money. From 67 on, I put 90% of my time in the car show business, and business period, of all types. 10% building cars. That's when I went to building one car a year for myself, which is most of the cars you see here. Tried to always build 1 or 2 cars a year in that 10% of my time. Never built a customer car from 1967 on. Never built a customer car to pay, you know, be paid to build something. I would build them, maybe sell them or something, or build them for myself. But I had the luxury of Monogram coming in 1962, giving me big bucks, and giving me the freedom to do well, not to predict it, because I did that on my own, but the cars, the Futurist and the Orange Hauler, and the money to be the freedom to express my styling. You know? And then the car shows gave me the financial backing to do what I wanted to do, build a big shop, like I had that air-conditioned shop in 1963. I built that. It was a 6-car shop, all air-conditioned, big showroom in the front, all paid for by Monogram and by my car shows, not building cars. You know. But I had that luxury that none of the other guys had. They were all out there still trying to build the cars and getting the real low bucks to build them. And I had all these other things feeding the money into me pretty continuously all my life. And I was enough of a businessman to be able to keep all that together due to some of my background and a little more education than everybody else had. A little bit better background than the average person in the car business. Most everybody in our business, when the car thing slowed down in '67, they all went down the tube. I mean, you know, they just didn't have any cars. Nobody wanted custom cars. They didn't know anything else but that. Me, I did just the opposite in '67. I just jumped into the business world, did more car shows, began building the radical cars and showing them in my shows. And the people were fascinated with the cars and would come pay money to see them, you know. And I went right on with it. I never slowed down. In fact, I built more and more radical cars through the years, and nobody's building anything than anybody did. But the luxury of that was I had the finances coming in to be able to do that, but the other guys didn't.
Sure.
And, so, you know, I've had tremendous lucky breaks that the other guys didn't have, as well as maybe a little bit more education or a little better background than any of them had, you know. The only person that probably parallels me is Barris. George is very brilliant, very smart, very educated businessman, and he's done very well in the business aspect. Probably was never a builder. He never intended to be a builder. He took something that he's a smart enough businessman to take something that him and his brother had created and turn it into a multi-million-dollar business off of just a few years of creating what he did, you know, on the wall right there. And then he was sitting right outside Universal Studio gate, which of course ideally put him in a position there.
That didn't hurt him.
Right. So he, you know, he managed to do other things like I did, only in a different vein, to create lots of income that had nothing to do with building cars. Me, I put a lot of that money back into my cars. He never seemed to do that. He just built the junk for the movies and didn't really invest in his personal life into his cars like I did. Me, I would build a car and invest the money to do it rather than build a house. I mean, that's what I felt about it. But I always had a nice house too, because I was lucky, you know, had the luxury of being able to have enough finances to do that. Now I did have some downs, don't misunderstand me. I had some tough times financially. The car shows in 1972 or 3 went real bad.
Why was that?
Well, the whole industry just really hit the bottom. All the car shows around the country, just really the bottom fell out on them. The gas crunch come on. People got a real negative feeling toward automobiles in general when the gas thing hit, you know. And the whole atmosphere of the automobile suddenly was a bad guy instead of a good guy. And it affected our car shows all over the country. Many of them folded, many of them had tough times about that. I managed to survive through that era and financially keep myself at least above ground, you know. And the shows slowly began to pick up. But I got away at that point. I told you earlier, I turned my shows around. Being a business person, I began to analyze what it took to draw people. And it wasn't custom cars and street rods anymore. It was the automotive business in general had some attraction to the general public, like the vans come in big, the dune buggies come in, the monster trucks come in, you know, and I just jumped on top of everything that come along and incorporated it into my shows and created the show into a happening or an event rather than a custom car show. I evolved right along with what was happening and incorporated it into my shows. Many of the guys didn't. None of the customizers did, of course, but many of the promoters didn't. We've lost many of the promoters. Even Larrabee's went broke over here. But they didn't have the, I don't know, and I suppose it's luck as much as anything, but I always managed to kind of see ahead of everything and managed to plan ahead of what was happening. And that's something the good Lord gave me, and I don't know why, and I don't know why I have that ability, but I could always kind of see ahead of everything that's happening in business as well as cars. You know? And, so I kind of had a guardian angel looking over me, I guess. Best way I can look at it.
That and a lot of common sense,
Yeah.
education,
Seemed
so
to have
forth. Yeah.
A little upper hand on most of it.
I don't notice Cushenberry, Winfield, or Barris, or anybody building a place like this.
No. In fact, most of them are, you know, pretty dire financial straits at this point in life, which is
That's
a
too
sad
bad.
situation.
Yeah, it really is.
Like Joe Balon, he's just totally broke, out of work, on unemployment. I mean, just really bad. Bill Cushenberry is just making it. I mean, you know, he's a body man, in essence, making normal salary, probably making a decent salary. The only person successfully financially in the whole business is George. And the one thing, and I would never want anybody to know this, but you and I, and you may already know, George married a very wealthy woman.
Oh, yes.
And she, through her money, has managed, George has had the luxury of doing a lot of things that doesn't require a lot of work on his part. You know, his home and everything come out of monies from their parents, or her parents. And I wouldn't want anybody to say
No,
that I said that.
That won't show up.
But I've known George a long time. George is, don't misunderstand me, George is a very smart businessman, he's always managed to stay right on top of things and do things that none of us, the rest of us, even thought about doing, you know, so he's been a step ahead. And it's been more in the movie vein, I mean, you know, the Hollywood vein, and a lot to do with his location, I think. But he's a smart person, a good intelligent businessman, made a lot of good moves, a lot of endorsements, a lot of things he's made money.
Oh, I'll tell you.
The rest of it hasn't managed to do.
Now I've spent the better part of a day and a half with it, measuring it, sitting in it, fondling it, loving it. It's an incredible automobile. It's a dream of a lifetime. The little boy in me is grateful. And all my life I never thought I'd see it in person. And he let me sit in it. Really cool. It's like an icon. It's a religious artifact. The Sistine Chapel on wheels. Apologies to Michelangelo. But he might have approved. I do. Remember, viewing this film, it's 1 hour later, Oklahoma time. There you go, Eric and Steve. There's a modern but old Camaro. Heck with that. This is better. Ta-da. By Daryl recently. Removable hardtop with ribs. Restyled front end. Same basic car, same wheelbase. Now with a billet front suspension, Jag rear end. Corvette rear end rather. Beautifully executed.